Before we begin, I would like to note that this video is purely speculation and we don't actually know what's going to happen yet in Overwatch. I'm gonna assume the worst case scenario here, but merely this is just me trying to show my concern about the direction that the developers are taking about my favorite character in the game. Also, this video is completely unscripted with the exception of a few notes I wrote down, so sorry for any sudden interruptions or lack of clarity. And also, this is my first time really doing any type of video like that, so I'm sorry in advance for everything that I will say here. So, you may or may not know that yesterday the developers released a blog about balance. They mentioned a lot of very, very interesting points, like Freya, hero bans, how they balance the heroes, etc. Well, most of it is a very fine read. I would recommend you to read that. That's not what I'm going to do here today. What I'm going to focus here is one of the very, very last lines of the blog, which says, quote unquote, Junker Queen will see some important changes to her commanding shout that prioritize ally over health, making her a more viable offensive tank choice. So, you may or may not know that Queen used to have such power. Yeah. It was this meta was called the Jotes, and I don't have any footage for that, but the best I can show you is balance history for her. So, in Overwatch 2 beta, when Queen first released, her balance was kind of all over the place. She's not as close as she was today. She has less HP. Her wound passive was 1x. Today's 2.25x, etc. But there was a difference, which was commanding shout. During the beta, commanding shout was 11 seconds. Today's 12, but that was after a lot of buffs that came later. But the most important part of it is that the full duration of shout was, like, allies had the full duration of shout, which was 5 seconds, well, originally 4 then 5 seconds. And that instead of 50 over health that it has now, for 3 seconds, it used to do 100 over health. Later, they changed it to 100 over health that decays over the 5 seconds. But later they, as you can see in launch of Overwatch 2, they basically giga nerfed shout. Well, if you already know what's a problem, it's because during that beta, especially in Overwatch League, there was a meta called Jotes. And even though, by the way, this is the cavalry post about it, which I actually am not going to look at the comments, but a lot of the comments were actually relatively positive about the buffs, but I actually want to explain why it's actually not that good of a thing because of Jotes. Even though I did not, just a small note, I did not play during the beta. I only started really playing Overwatch during the launch of Overwatch 2, but this is from everything I've heard. Basically, Jotes wasn't really about, what Queen is loved for, not for her landing her skill shots, landing her abilities for lifesteal, etc. She was basically a shout bot, from my understanding. She was basically on every 11 seconds, when she had a shout, she would basically give her allies a shit ton of overhealth. I think, if I remember correctly, it was with Genji, I think. Maybe Sojourn as well, Genji Sojourn, I think. I might remember this wrong. I actually did not research this properly, sorry. And they would just stack Brig Lucio with Rally and Beat to just give people a shit ton of overhealth so they just don't really die, from my understanding. And this is basically what created Jotes. This was the only reason why Queen was meta. Even though we still don't know what the changes are for Queen Shout, I'm gonna assume the worst case scenario, and it will break her. And if it will break her, it will actually make a very brain dead meta. It will bring back a meta that I explained earlier with Jotes. It won't really be about Queen learning her abilities, being strong because she's survivable because of her bleeds, but rather because she presses one button every 12 seconds, I'm assuming, because I'm assuming they're going to keep the same number, to just like give her allies a shit ton of survivability, so they just bully the enemy team. It basically allows them, as Spylo likes to call it, to cheat the Overwatch 2 system. Yeah. Speaking of Spylo, I actually watched his reaction of this exact line. He wasn't as concerned as me, but he was also not happy. Not that it should like influence your opinion on this. It did not influence mine, but it is important to mention nonetheless that even one of the most famous content creators that is usually very objective and tries his best to be like smart about what causes what in the game, causes him to be concerned, then I would also be very concerned about it. But this is not everything. My biggest concern when it comes to this is actually the aftermath. So assuming the worst, i.e. she becomes meta, and she just, dominates with Shout. My biggest fear is that they, instead of reverting the problem, i.e. reverting the Shout buffs, what they will do is take power away from her kit, like other parts of her kit. So like, from her Shout, i.e. from her knife, her axe, her wounds, etc. Which for me will be a very big step backwards, because it even further enforces the idea of her being a Shout bot, rather than the 3 years of progress they made with her, i.e. like her being a frontline, not really a frontline brawler, but a brawler that is really good at sustaining if you're good with her and you can land her shots on her. And to enforce this idea, I also want to show you a comment of mine I made in the r/Junker Queen mains, which, by the way, for a subreddit, they were actually also pretty concerned about the topic. So this is my comment about this. I'm more concerned about this change than excited, not because of the changes themselves. Well, also the changes themselves, I kind of thought about it more later. But the fear that if it breaks her, which it's basically a summary of what I've already said, but if it breaks her, they will nerf other parts of her kit to compensate, which will undo almost 3 years of progress with this character since the beta. Shout is by far the least healthy part of her kit, if it's the most powerful. I want to also reiterate that Shout has 2 parts of her kit. Let me show you the stats. There's the selfish part of Shout, which I'll argue is way healthier for the game, because it actively gives Queen the choice between, do I use it defensively to survive, or do I use it aggressively to engage? And there's the AoE team part of it, which is what they're going to buff, which is the problematic part of the hero. So as you can see, this is self-healing, overhealth. This is the allied overhealth. This is your duration. This is their duration, the allied duration. So, and it's very fragile. Very fragile. As I told you before, it did break her in the beta. And I am afraid they're going to do it again. So, yeah, that was my point. I also make a prediction about what the changes will be, but this is actually a rather optimistic change. My thought is that they will just increase the max overhealth to 75, which is the same number as the Wrecking Ball, by the way, fun fact. I can show it to you right now. Actually, I don't need to show you it. Basically, Ball can, transfer to allies. It's up to 75 health, up to 4 seconds duration. So my guess was that they might do the same thing, which would actually be good. It will still put her in a bad direction, but still not as bad as I thought it would be. But as I said, this video assumes the worst. Yeah, that's basically my point here. So why am I even making this video in the first place? Some of you may ask that. I'm making this video as first of all, to show my grievances over this direction, which, yes, it's very early. It could amount to nothing, but I want to do it nonetheless. Secondly, if my prediction is correct, this is more or less a message to the Blizzard developers, which will, by the way, never probably come to them, to please realize that whatever you did with Queen in the last 3 years was perfectly fine, perfectly well, and you should, and instead of nerfing other parts of her kit to keep Giga Shout, or if it is Giga Shout, to just revert the changes you're gonna do and keep her the way she was since mid-season 4, basically, or since season 1 if you want to count when she was like completely dog shit. But that's up to you guys. So yeah, that was my rant / debate. I hope you could understand me well. I hope the audio was well. Thank you for watching, and see you.